Hello, everyone. It's Barb here, and we're going to today talk about photographing the unknown. And by that, I mean things that you have not seen before. So, for instance, some of the things that I've had to photograph that I had never seen before would be such as a slaughterhouse in Mexico. While I was taking a workshop, we all went in, and it was not an easy thing for me, and I do not think I took any photographs, and I ended up leaving the slaughterhouse early and just going out and sitting outside. In Cuba, there was a pig that was slaughtered for our workshop, the five of us, and we photographed the pig being slaughtered, and we all stood on one side of it and watched the event, and that was a difficult scene to photograph. I do want to say that the pig was being slaughtered for a dinner that was for our workshop. Each of us paid $25 for that dinner, which was to be the next day. That $25 from the five of us bought that farmer a new roof, which had been destroyed in a hurricane. So it wasn't just a random slaughtering of a pig. I just wanted to be sure that I said that. I've photographed some religious processions in Sicily, and in that situation, it was a bit of awe in their pageantry and what went into those processions. And you're also overcome by the sheer beauty of it. And so that comes into factor when we're photographing something that we haven't seen before. Jewish weddings I've done before, and I had to be instructed when I could go into the ceremony and when I had to leave, and what other kinds of rituals they had that I was to photograph, and some things I was not to photograph. I've also had to photograph what's called an angel photo session, which is when a child is either stillborn, or born and not going to live very long. And I had a very long-term client for over 10 years. I photographed her, then when she was engaged, and then when they had dogs, and then when they had children. I photographed her like twice a year for 10 years. And she's a very, very good client. And she found out her child that she was carrying was not going to live beyond a day, and asked me to come and photograph it, and also the funeral. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but I know that I was honoring her and her child and her family, and I felt that it was not a time for me to be squeamish or upset with the situation, that I was there to do, like I said, an honorable thing for her, so she had these memories and it's what she wanted. I don't even know. I'm trying to remember. I think what I did was I looked at it as this is a documentary. I am photographing something that could be the same if I was in a war-torn country. You know, you have to photograph what you've been asked to photograph and put aside any type of resistance to what you're seeing. And you have to kind of almost look through it, is the best way that I can describe it. I also photographed some folks, some portraits. So I did a noted jazz musician in Kansas City, and I don't photograph celebrities. So this was the closest thing to a celebrity that I'd ever photographed. And also, on the same day, believe it or not, I was to photograph a Holocaust survivor. And I was pretty nervous that day. I was pretty strung up, I guess you would say. I'm not overly so, like I was containing it, but I could feel it within that I was excited but also the nerves were rising. And I know that it's important in some cases, or almost in every case, to have a little bit of nerves before you go on a shoot. I was told when I was younger, I think it was middle school, where we had to do these little speeches, and the teacher told us that if you didn't have any nerves at all, it would mean that you didn't care. So I always remembered that. And I always, even when I do a portrait shoot, not so much anymore, but I remember, being just kind of hyped up, ready to go, and having the little edge of nervousness and being okay with it because it meant that I cared. I also photographed sort of a pop singer down in Nashville who had come in second in The Voice. And that was interesting and fun. And then also photographed the Mennonites for American Bedroom. All four of those portraits were for American Bedroom. And I can show you some of those. So if we're asked to photograph an event, what we have to be very careful about is to not photograph it as simply descriptive. So we want to move beyond just photographing something in a descriptive way, because let's just say you were hired for a surgery, for instance. So you're going to go into a hospital and you're going to photograph a surgery. Well, you have to photograph the actual doing of the surgery. And that could end up being very descriptive. But once you get in there and you've kind of, you're adjusted and you've lost the nervousness that you might have had, then you can start to get a little bit more creative, getting the surgery in the picture, but also some other things. So there's a saying by Henri Cartier-Bresson, never shoot the parade. And I'm always glad that this is something I learned in the very, very beginning stages of my photography. And you can see here that this is the parade. Over here, they're lining up, and this is the parade. But I'm on the peripheral area of the parade. I want to shoot the edges. I want to shoot what's going on the outside of the actual event. So that's an important thing to remember. So here's a descriptive image. Let's say you were hired to shoot a birthday party. So this is a birthday party. It's ongoing. Kids are all seated. The parents would probably be happy with this shot and other shots that you would get, close-ups and this, that, and the other. This is what is referred to as a descriptive image. It does not move beyond description. It doesn't really tell a story. There's no tension here. There's no metaphor here. There's no allegory here. It's just a flat descriptive shot of a birthday party. Here's a birthday party. I shot this for Hometown. It was this woman's, I believe it was 103rd birthday. I believe it was our 103rd birthday. So after studying documentary photography from all aspects, Bresson to Eugene Richards to Robert Frank to Helen Levitt, studying with Ernesto Bazan, Mary Ellen Mark, all of these influences pulled together for me to be able to get a photograph like this. So what I want to do is tell a story of what's going on in these people's lives. It's good that no one is looking at me, because now you're a fly on the wall. You do not want them to be aware of you. So I have a lot of action going on here, and I have little vignettes within this frame to tell the story. First of all, we have the cake, the happy birthday cake, which is being cut. We have paper plates. We have the birthday girl. It says, kiss me, it's my birthday here. We have details in the background. We have this woman looking off over here. We have a couple of little things going on here. We have this girl back here choking or something. She's got her hands crisscrossed and she's either throwing her head back laughing. I'm not really 100% sure, but that's a great secondary element is what we call it. This is the main element here. The story, the main story. This is a secondary element. And sometimes when you get lucky and you work a scene very, very hard, You might get another element here with this girl stuffing this cake into her mouth on the end of her fork, which is fantastic. I love the edging here because now we're kept into the frame. So that's a good way to keep the eye into the frame. As of this is over here, this keeps our eye in the frame. So our eye keeps going here. And we have another element here, which is this girl. She almost looks a little ghostly. She's just kind of staring. And then we have this girl here. But there's about 3 different little stories here, and we're peeking into this world. We have access to this world, which is something that Mary Ellen Mark always talked about. It was like access, access, access. You need to get the access. Once you have the access, now you can do your job. And I remember I did lots of different photographs until they actually sat down to cut the cake. And it could have been a very descriptive image, but because I've done a lot of studying and I take it all in, and I tried very hard to create an image that would tell a fuller story. And in a lot of, obviously I got lucky with the background and the little girl and all that, but it just all comes together when we study, when we continuously learn. This is the shot of the pig that was being slaughtered in Cuba. And it also takes a bit of time, which is hard. So here I am photographing something. I don't even eat pork, but I'm there as a photographer. That's my job at the moment, and I'm trying to get the best shot I can. So when the dog came into frame, I realized I had a very good secondary element to tell the story a little deeper, and his eyes look very, very sad. And so now I've got this metaphor, and then our pig here is, eye is pretty dead eye there, and we've got some chickens poking around, and we have the Arch of the Men working. So this was the more successful shot that I had taken that day. Before then, I didn't have the dog in it, and it was a little bit descriptive. It was just men leaning over and slaughtering a pig. This is a photograph that I took for Hometown. I think it was early 90s, and with film. But there's a lot of ways to tell the story of death. And I liked that this was not so on the nose for the collection in the book. This is a bunny that died, and my son is there with his hands behind his back and seeming, quite proper in this ritual, which is to bury this bunny. And I love the details of the gloves and the box here, and just the edge of my husband's legs in this wheelbarrow. So that is another way to tell a story that might be hard to photograph. This is, I believe, just before we went into the slaughterhouse. It was very early in the morning in Mexico. But one thing that I learned quite a bit from Ernesto Bazan is to always get the eyes of the animals, because they can tell the story. And then this gentleman here popped up in the background, so that was a great secondary element. I think I was just focusing in the beginning on the cows, and yes, sometimes we get lucky, but we also have to recognize it instead of sitting there going, oh, that guy wrecked my photo. No, he added. This is in Cambodia, and this is also a very hard subject. These kids are in an orphanage. They get fed by the nuns, and they gather, and they're just kind of hanging and looking at us, and you can just see in their eyes a lot of sorrow there. This is in Cuba. This is cockfight, and I really didn't think I wanted to photograph the cockfight, so I did photograph some of the cockfight, but it's a hard thing to photograph. It's probably similar to something like photographing golf or photographing an actual event. There's an art to photographing wrestling. I did it quite a bit. Any kind of sport, you need to get beyond the description of what the sport is. So instead of photographing the cockfight, I decided to photograph the viewers, and this was my favorite shot of the day. And I loved getting the edges of all the gentlemen here, all smoking in the hands and everything, and then this gentleman here. This is in Sicily during Easter week and all the processions there. I just kind of ran with what I was seeing because I didn't really know all the religious background, and I'm not Catholic. And so what mattered to me most was composition and expression, and there was a lot of it. So I just concentrated on that, moving around the city and moving within the processions. Some of them we went to as early as 3 in the morning and just watched and waited for them to come out of the churches and come back to the churches, and men were crying, and it was just really interesting. This was another shot that I took of the processions. And so, again, I kind of felt like there was things here I didn't really understand or really know about, didn't really understand why they were wearing the photos on their chest there, and I didn't really understand these long candles. But that didn't really matter because there was beauty in it, and I just tried to, again, make a good composition and get a good expression, and that's what I concentrated on. This is a prom, so yes, you could do the obvious, which is the girls in the prom dresses, dancing with the boys in the tuxes, and all that. And I think I did a little of that, but I wasn't really interested in that. I wanted to do something else at the prom, and I actually had never been to a prom because my high school didn't do a prom. But in the back of my mind, thinking I want something different, and when this one girl said she was going to the bathroom and 5 girls stood up with her, I went, I'm going too. So they all went in there, and there were other girls in there already. And the big trick here, and this is shooting with film, was to get the faces in the mirrors. So I at least had some faces in the mirrors that could help tell the story. Again, an event is one thing, and focusing on the actual event is fine if you can tell the story in your own personal way. This is also for hometown. This is an event that happens once a year in the little small town where I grew up, and it's called the Gay 90s, and it's for any person that lives in the town that is 90 years old or older. So they have this luncheon, and it's at a VFW, and they have lunch for all these folks, and they have music, and I think they have like raffles, and it's a fun get together for all these folks. And it's not an easy thing to shoot. I probably shot it about 5 or 6 times. I went every year, just like I went to the parades every year, to try to get that classic, that great image that I was looking for. This is the image that I ended up with, and it's hard to photograph people sitting around round tables. You probably know this if you've all done weddings. You need those people to be moving. You need them to get away from the round tables. Yes, I did get some pictures of people, talking. And I think there was one shot I got of this one gentleman whispering to this woman, and she was laughing and things like that. But you're trying to get an image with emotion, some tension, some interest to pull you in. And I just love these women, and so much is going on here, and there's all this tension and these expressions, and I love the woman in the background. And so, yeah, so this was the image that I ended up with for hometown. This was for American Bedroom. So I got permission to photograph the Mennonites. They're a little bit more open to being photographed than the Amish. They were happy that they could just be reading their Bible, which I said was absolutely fine, and they wanted to drink their coffee. And at first they had the little dog, and it was going like this for a little bit. And finally the dog jumped down, and then I asked them, the light was beautiful coming in, to look out the window, and it was fairly early, and there might have been birds or something. And they were just relaxing, enjoying the moment, and I was able to get the shot. This is the jazz trumpet player that I photographed in Kansas City. And so he was a very sort of fastidious lad. He wanted everything just right, and his bed was made perfectly, and everything was just perfect in his room. And I'm like, we got to mess this up a little bit. So we kind of ruffled up his bed, and he jumped in. He said that this is what he does. He practices like that in bed often, and he has, I believe, some sort of silencer here so that his wife doesn't always have to hear him. We did a series like this from this angle, and then I think I shot from this angle with the window in the background. And then he talked about maybe he was getting ready to go to play that night, because I believe he plays like almost every night in Kansas City. He's Lonnie McFadden. He's a pretty popular musician in Kansas City, and he liked the idea of getting ready to go to play that night. And he also tap dances. You can see his tap shoes here, and his tux is laid out, and little details. There's his glasses, and he has this beautiful smile, and he has his beloved trumpet. So that was the image that ended up in the book. This is Megan, the singer in Nashville, and I did lots of photos of her, and I couldn't put my hands on any of the other ones, but we just had a lot of fun with her, because this is she has like a little airstream in the back, and it's all really beautifully decorated, and she wanted to do the shot in there, and we did some in her bedroom too. I did a whole bunch of shots, but I'm sorry I don't have other shots to show you. She was a lot of fun, and I think I brought donuts, and we all chilled and had a good time. And so by the time it was time to photograph her, I didn't have any nerves at all. I just went for it. So this is Sonia. I believe she may be 97 at this point, maybe 98. Yeah, so she is actually also in Kansas City. And I have to say that I had so much trepidation and nervousness to photograph her, because first of all, I'd never met a Holocaust survivor before, and I was very excited to meet her and talk with her. And we did talk for quite a long time, and she told me a lot of stories that I would never repeat to another human being. It was as if everything that happened to her happened like 5 minutes ago. I mean, she remembered everything. But she took me in her bedroom, and she showed me all these clippings here that she'd kept over the years, articles. And my whole thing when I went to photograph her was, I guess, kept telling myself, photograph her eyes. Get in closer than you normally shoot, and try to get the story in her eyes. This is what I was telling myself, and it almost backfired on me, but I was able to get this shot here, which I really liked a lot. I mean, you can see, let me see if I can get these bigger. You can see her eyes here. You can see the story in her eyes. I mean, then we were doing some other shots, and then she said, oh, she wanted to show me these other articles, and she was pulling them out, and then I saw the tattoo on her arm, and I was like, oh my God, how could I have forgotten about that? And so she was sitting there showing me these, and I was hoping that I could get a good shot. The light, when I first got to her house, it was a little bit early, because that was the only time I could go. So that happens too. I think it was at 3. But by 4, the light was getting a little bit better. And this is the shot that I end up liking the best. I love her eyes. I love the fact that you can see so much in her eyes, the memory, the sadness. She had a beautiful statement, and this photograph made it into the book. Technically, it was selected for the book, but her family had me pull it out at the last minute. They didn't want her in a book with nudity. So it wasn't her so much as it was her family, and I couldn't argue with them, but I do love the photograph. All right, so now it's time for your shoot, and you are going into something that is unknown, something that you've never witnessed before, something that you've never seen before. So I find it helpful if I have everything in my favor. It's kind of a favorite term of mine, put everything in your favor. So for me, I'll have my camera ready. I'll have a lens choice. If I need any other lenses or think I may need another lens, I will put those in a knapsack. In this case, I knew where I was going and I knew my car was very close. So I decided in this instance, I wouldn't wear the knapsack on my back because I knew that it was a crowded area. So I left it in my car and I can retrieve it very easily. I know what kind of day it is, so I'm going to pick my ISO. Um, in this case, I'm inside and outside, so I have to be careful once I choose my ISOs to be able to change them back and forth as I'm going in and out. Appropriate dress for this occasion. The mom already told me to make sure my head was covered and that I had some kind of boots, protective boots on. And so I wore my gardening boots and I had a hat on and a vest because it was pretty cold. I think the two super important things are last minute reference and inspiration. So I would say 90% of the time before I go out to do any kind of shoot at all, I'll look for a little bit of inspiration. It could be anything. Sometimes what I do is I take a favorite book of mine and I'll just open it randomly to whatever page it falls on. I do that often with Wyeth books. I do it often with the Mennonite book by Larry Towell and a few other handful other books that I just open and let it fall onto the image that it falls on. And if it works for me, I'll take that image with me. If it doesn't really strike me, I'll quickly look for an image or inspiration. And I try to keep one or two in my mind. You can't really keep a lot more than that in your mind at a time. So I think one day when I opened Larry Towell's book, it fell to a beautiful still life, and I kept that in my mind. And normally I might forget to do still lifes, but in this case I remembered and I was able to do a few really beautiful still lifes because I just had that on my mind. So it really helps. And then when I get to wherever it is I'm going, I'll park, and on the way I'll always listen to music. I should have put that word up here, music. I'm a big jazz and classical music listener, and I have a lot of mixes and I mix it all up. Of course, I like rock and roll too. Um, but it's really helpful to me to pick some music on my way that it really either revs me up or calms me, or it's just music that I really love and it kind of brings me to a place. I feel like surrounding myself with genius, whether it's artists or poets or writers or musicians, whatever it is, as much as possible. I just love to kind of raise the bar and always looking at work and listening to beautiful pieces of music. So when I get to my location, I'll shut the music off and I'll sit for a couple minutes undisturbed in silence and just do some a little bit of breathing from my meditation practice just to calm myself. Because one thing that I've learned over the years, and I swear by this, the more calm you are, the more relaxed you are, the better your shoot will go. That's why I like having everything in my favor. You know, my batteries are on my person, the cameras are on my neck. I don't need to think about anything really. I'm ready to go. I'm thinking about the light. I'm thinking about the content of what I can get into this frame and whatever else I'm thinking about that I have for inspiration. So all of these things. So I just like to sit for a few minutes and just relax. And then as soon as I open the door, I'm ready. Like I'm ready to shoot. You know, my camera is right on my chest and I'm ready to shoot. All right, so here we are at the farm. The chicken coop is down the hill, and the two youngest boys, it was their job to run down and get the chickens. I went along with them and got into the chicken coop with them. What they're doing is collecting the chickens, and so I'm just trying to be a fly in the wall, more or less, and grab some shots. And I'm trying to see what happens with the chickens. The chickens tend to run away and cluster together when they come in to grab a chicken. You know, the defense mechanism there and ganging up and pulling together. And so I'm aware of that and keeping them sort of in the background and trying to get something in the foreground. Just poking around. It's not a very big area. Just trying different things. You know, that's all you can really do when you're in a very new situation and you're not 100% sure what to expect. And then getting a little closer and seeing if that was an interesting photograph. So it's just an experimentation, really. And you guys all know this. You just try different things. Once you're settled and you kind of understand how the flow of things will go, then you can start to push the limits a little bit. So now they're going up the hill. So they probably did this, I'm going to say at least 3 times. And, you know, they're running up the hill. So I'm running along with them, trying to keep up with them. Just show you here some in black and white. And I loved the sky, and I loved the boy's arms in the front, you know, how they're hanging, his shoulders with the weight of the chickens. And this is a reverse shot of them taking the chickens out of the coop. So now I'm just trying to see if I can utilize the wood entrance in the door. Then they got the bright idea of putting the chickens into this wagon and pulling the wagon up the hill. And you can see that it's still pretty hard. You can see by his body language how hard it is to pull that up the hill. And they're both pushing and pulling, and but they could bring more chickens at a time when they did this. So I'm just more or less circling the events and finding interesting gestures, interesting expressions. And this is them bringing the chickens in to be slaughtered. I should say, or maybe I should have said before, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you may not want to watch any more of this. Perfectly understandable. I eat chicken and I eat turkey. I don't eat any other proteins besides eggs other than that. I felt as if it was my duty to witness how chickens are slaughtered. So this was my first experience there. So now I'm in this fairly small room, and there's 4 or 5 folks, you know, kids and the dad in there, in and out. And I'm, you know, just kind of poking around, trying to see what kind of angles I can get, what kind of story I can tell. I'm watching for moments. I loved his expression. And here it is in black and white. And I really liked this one because I liked the repetition of the boy's gesture repeating itself. So I thought that was really interesting, and the, you know, the door separating them and what's going on their work day here. And this is it in black and white. I think I have another version of this. So it was just something that appeared, which is the door, the inside outside shots, and I do like those shots. I think I talked about that before. Some Larry Towell shots where he had photographed the family in the kitchen and then there was something going on outside. So I kind of like that and had that in my mind. Also looking for moments of beautiful quality of light, and I liked all the hands here, and I liked him resting for a moment. So that was interesting to me. And I think that you have to allow things to unveil themselves because they will. So you can't be too hyper excited at first to get in there and try to get everything. It's you can see how I saw the lay of the land, and now I'm just going back and forth between going down the hill to get the chickens and then in the slaughtering house. I liked this image. I liked all the action and I liked all the figures and I liked the light. And I'm just sort of repeating myself here. You can see that. You never know which will be the best one when you're shooting, so you just kind of keep at it and following your intuition. And this is a powerful image without his head. Now, if I had his face in here, the shot would probably be a more or less descriptive image, but without his head in the image, I think it's a little bit stronger. Here's some black and white. So that was the chicken day, and now it's the turkey day. So this is a couple weeks later, and it was a nice day. There was some good golden light, and the turkeys have been brought up from a further area. They were brought up and all put into this trailer, so they'll be retrieving them from the trailer and bringing them into the slaughterhouse. So this is the 14-year-old boy again, and he's bringing the turkey in, and I love the light, and they also had some friends that came that day, so there was actually quite a few people. And this boy was going in to retrieve the turkeys, and what I noticed was similar to the chickens, they all sort of gathered together, but even more so the turkeys. So when he had grabbed this one turkey, all those turkeys kind of gathered, and the light was right on them, and I thought that was quite good. Here it is in black and white. The turkeys, they go into this hot bath, but it's important, especially if you are eating turkey and chicken, to know that this is a step is different from most processes. In other words, when you buy chicken or turkey, you want to try to make sure it's air chilled, because if it's not air chilled, it is going through a chlorine bath to remove the feathers. So you do not want to eat chicken that is not air chilled if you can help it. So this is a tumbler, and after the bath, it goes in here and it tumbles most of the feathers off. And then this is the back room, and the mom is working here, and this is the 11-year-old boy from the farm, and this is a friend of the family, and they're all pulling feathers, and they're finishing the turkeys. And here's black and white. And yeah, there's not a lot of words that need to be said. It's pretty clear what has happened here and what is happening here. And I guess this is the truth of the matter. There's no sugarcoating this process. I like all the details here that tell the story. I like the blood on his hand. I like the feathers, their boots. You can tell that they're young. I like the legs of the chicken, the feet there, and a little bit of light coming in, and their body language. There's a little bit of differing body language. On the left, the boy is very sturdy, and the boy on the right is a little less confident, it looks to me. And then the blood on the wall. So it's obvious, again, what happened here. It's just a different way of telling the story, and something that you would have to have access to in order to get this shot. So this is all kind of coming full circle, and being allowed to photograph something is half the battle, and then getting in there and figuring out how to get an image with everything sort of stacked against you, which is the common and normal way things are. There's a lot of problem solving in photography. And I really actually love that aspect of it. You're presented with whatever it is. In the case of American Bedroom, it was usually four walls with some kind of light coming in, and then you have to figure out how to get the best image you can. This is a similar situation where there's a lot of moving parts. This is a particular situation which I'd never seen before, so it's all new to me, and I'm trying to figure out how to go about getting an image that will tell a strong story. There were other situations that presented themselves. The extra folks that were visiting made the room quite crowded, and there were opportunities to get some expressions and some different configurations of the folk. I'm just looking for a little bit of drama. I really like the light coming in on this boy's face, and I like bookending it with these two figures, and then right in the middle is the chicken. I'm sorry, the turkey. And then I think these boys were a little bit cold, and there's a little bit of waiting around for things to happen, and I think this is very dramatic in black and white. I really like their faces. There's definitely times for color images and then times for images in black and white. And I used to photograph specifically with a camera with color and a camera with black and white, and I would photograph according to what I saw an image to be, whether it was color or black and white. But since digital, that's changed a bit. Sometimes I'm really 100% sure that this is a color image, and vice versa. And sometimes when I get back to processing, I realize that the image I saw in color really is better in black and white. I'm sure that that's the same for all of you. And I am repeating myself a little bit, trying to get a close-up that might be an interesting image, as I did down with the chickens. And then this trailer was really interesting because the light in the trailer was really warm, and so I kept going in there, and I liked this particular image. And this boy has a very calm demeanor, and you can see that in his face, how he is handling the turkey. This is an interesting image. There's a bit of a dichotomy here between his little bit of a smile. He is a boy, he's 14. He's used to this. He's used to slaughtering the chickens and the turkeys. He's got this very bloody hand here. They're working hard. There's no time in between to do things such as wash your hands or anything like that. It's a very fast pace. So he was coming out of the trailer with the turkey and then walking down the hill. And this was the image that showed to me how he was honoring the turkey in its last moments and walking him to the slaughterhouse, but with dignity and grace. And it was a beautiful moment because the turkey opened the wings a little bit, and the sky is quite beautiful, if a little foreboding, and the light on his hair was beautiful. The profile of the turkey and the gentility of the boy holding the turkey. So I really like this image. And then a friend of mine pointed out to me, particularly in the black and white, and here it is in black and white, he said, "Boy, Barb, that hose in the negative space was a gift from God." And I do like it in black and white. And I mean, this is a moment, a very strong storytelling moment, and hopefully it can show the grace and the honor of these last moments of the life of this turkey. So I think this image sums up my experience in general of the slaughtering of the chickens and the turkeys. As a whole, I think I did my best to tell the story, and I do think that in this image I brought everything together with telling the story of slaughtering animals for food, for sustenance. And I think that I wanted to find beauty in everyday life. That's what I'm looking for in this project. And the project is about all of us looking for the light in our days. Searching for the same light is the name of the project. So I'm happy with being able to tell a very rounded, very full story with a little bit of poetry and a decisive moment, a good composition, and everything that we're always looking for. Some tension, some gesture, some expression, everything that we're looking for in a photograph I was able to find in this moment. So I think in the end, what I can tell you from my experience here with photographing the unknown is getting in there, letting go of some of the things that are uncomfortable for you, looking beyond them, accepting the situation, and being the artist, the photographer that you are, and just continuing to look as a photographer for all the things that we're looking for to create a solid image. And then if you can push it to the level of bringing a moment into it with some good light and composition, expression and gesture, and then a touch of poetry, I think you've done your job. All right, everyone, so that's today's Patreon. I hope you enjoy it. I hope there's a nugget or two that you can take away from this and apply it when you're out there shooting. I have a few things coming up. We're going to do one on street photography coming up and a couple others in mind. Also, don't forget that I'm teaching in Prague in May, so if you go on my website, AmericanBedroomSeries.com, you can get info about that, and I'd love to have you. So take care, everyone. Stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.